With no objection, we'll consider those proceedings approved by the board. Okay, they are approved. Public comment, as always, we welcome any public comment on issues related to Scup, sea bass, and fluke that are not on the agenda. Is anyone in the audience, anyone from the public here to comment? All right, I see no one carrying the comments, so we will go on to number 4, which is review of the Marine Recreational Information Program, Wave 4 harvest estimates for summer flounder, scup, and black sea bass. Kirby will let us know where we are right now with those 3 stocks and also where we might end up at the end of this year. So, Kirby.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce. So I'm going to first walk through how the harvest estimates through Wave 4 currently compare to last year at this time. That's how we're going off of evaluating what we're kind of projecting the harvest to be. And it will queue up the next part, which is evaluating how you guys would like to manage summer flounder and black sea bass in 2016. The memo included in this meeting materials is in the back, and it outlines both in table form and some additional information on how harvest has played out relative to last year. So starting off with summer flounder, through Wave 4 in numbers or in pounds, currently the coastwide harvest is 4,200,003 fish. That puts us at approximately 56% of the recreational harvest limit of 7.38 million pounds. This is about 40% below where we had projected the harvest to be based on the status quo regional alignment and regional management measures for the states. One thing to keep in mind is that in 2014 the RHL was 7.01. It was bumped up to 7.38 in 2015 because of the RSA not being included or being deducted. Based on the board and council's action in August, the recreational harvest limit in 2016 will be 5.42 million pounds. So as I mentioned, in terms of the management measures for summer flounder in 2015, the regional alignment and the state management measures within those regions are the same as what they were in 2014. One thing to note is that in terms of management measures for states that are open through the end of the year, Rhode Island, Delaware through Virginia, and North Carolina all are open until the end of the year. In terms of the regional performance, a number of states have come in underneath where they were at this point last year. Specifically, Massachusetts, Connecticut through New Jersey are much lower in their how they've harvested through Wave 4 relative to what they were projected to harvest, whereas Rhode Island and Delaware through Virginia are much closer, and North Carolina has exceeded what we had at least projected them to harvest through Wave 4. Next is black sea bass. In the memo, it outlines what both the state-by-state harvest has been, as well as the ad hoc regional performance. Relative to last year, there is approximately a 1.4% increase in the total landings, from 2.45 million pounds to 2.48 million pounds. And that puts the coastwide landings over the RHL, the recreational harvest limit for this year, by about 7%. So we're already at 107% of the recreational harvest limit for 2015. Similar to summer flounder, the recreational harvest limit was increased in 2015 from 2014 from 2.26 million pounds to 2.33 million pounds, and under the potential revised recreational harvest limit for 2016 that the board will be looking at later today. The recreational harvest limit would be 2.82 million pounds in 2016. In terms of regional performance, the northern region states in pounds have actually not increased significantly. While it was about a 100,000 pound increase, it amounts to a little less than 1%. For the southern region, there was a significant increase by about 25%, or excuse me, 24%, but relatively speaking, the southern region harvest is significantly less than the northern region. And last is for Scup. In 2015 through wave 4, currently harvest is below where we were at this point in 2014 at 2.9 million pounds, which is about a 13% decrease relative to last year. Based on the new benchmark stock assessment that was conducted this year, the approved recreational harvest limit for 2016 is 6.09 million pounds, so there will be about an 800,000 pound decrease between this year's recreational harvest limit and next year's. So that's it for the three species in terms of their harvest through wave 4. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Kirby. Before I ask for questions, I'll acknowledge that Chris Moore is present. Chris Moore from the Mid-Atlantic Council, Executive Director, and Rick Robbins, who is the current chair, longstanding chair of the Mid-Atlantic Council. So any issues that are raised regarding the Mid-Atlantic Council, obviously, you know, they're here and they can address those for us if staff is unable to do so, although I suspect staff can do so. Questions regarding the presentations just provided? Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kirby, on black sea bass, I thought I heard you say over by about 7%, but then I see 1.4% in the table. I must be missing something or misunderstood what you said. Thank you.
Yeah, so what the table shows is the harvest relative to the previous year's harvest and not compared directly to the recreational harvest limit for black sea bass. So relative to last year we were at 102% of the recreational harvest limit at this point. With a slight bump up in the pounds, it actually is 7% of the RHL this year. So that might be why it isn't matching up quite the same.
Other questions? David Borden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kirby, or somebody from the Virginia delegation, I'm just kind of interested. The black sea bass, there was 1,000% increase in the landings in that state. And do we have an idea of what caused that? I mean, was it just availability, or was it more that of a targeting effort? If we could get some insight on that, I think it'd be useful. Thank you.
I can offer first some information, at least on the MRIP information we have, and then Rob may be able to add some more context. So these numbers don't include the proportion standard error attached to them, and for Virginia's black sea bass harvest through wave 4 in weight, the PSE is about 96. So that's significantly higher. As they note on the website, it's for anything over a 50 PSE to understand that there's significant error around that estimate.
Rob, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I actually had a question, but I'll chip in there that Kirby, I would say, is the same about the PSE, but also until the last 4 or 5 years, there was a lot of variability in Virginia and much higher estimate some years, and it did bounce around a bit. So we'll have to wait and see how it looks as a final estimate. And if I may ask my question, Mr. Chairman?
Certainly.
Okay, my question is, Kirby, 56% on summer flounder of what we did last year at this time, but to put it in perspective of what we're facing with the lower 2016 RHL, I realize that the numbers of fish haven't been set yet or anything like that for 2016, but roughly it's probably closer to an 80% or so, somewhere around there, if we'd had the same RHL that we're going to have in 2016. So while it may give some relief to think about what's going on right now, I think we have to consider what's going to happen in 2016, and the next time we meet, we'll have more information, and it'll become apparent that, you know, Wave 5 is going to be pretty important. My understanding is that it's not an exuberant wave in certain states, so it may come out that we don't go into 2016 with the regional management in a problematic fashion. At least that's the optimistic way to look at it. And the question was, of course, if you have an idea of how we stand next to 5.42 million pounds, given what you know about the data so far, on what that would be.
Yeah, so I do have a slide on this, but I don't want to put it up quite yet, just because the technical committee is going through this year and trying to reevaluate how they go about taking that information from MRIP and then determining the best way to both project landings out and also to account for in instances where reductions need to be made. So there's a couple of ways that the technical committee is looking at it. In terms of where the harvest through Wave 4 is currently relative to, say, next year's recreational harvest limit, it puts us at about 86%, I believe. And so if you were to assume that management measures stayed constant, that harvest stayed constant, then that might hold up. But, you know, it's unclear if that will be the case. So.
Any other questions on the wave data for these three stocks? Tom?
Could you put the Scup figures up? So, according to MREPS, which is my, the Bible, we have caught 0 Scup in 2014, and we caught 3,210. I have no reference to say where we are from where we're supposed to be, so what were we supposed to catch in New Jersey this year?
Well, so this is just straight across offering what the harvest was through Wave 4 in 2014 compared to 2015. So because there hasn't been any concerns for Scup in recent years over exceeding the recreational harvest limit, the technical committee and staff haven't evaluated Scup on a state-by-state basis relative to the recreational harvest limit.
Follow up. Could you tell me what the PSE was for 2014 on the 0 Scup landings?
I don't think I have that data in front of me right now, unfortunately, but I can look it up and get back to you.
Further questions? All right, thank you, Kirby, for that update. Now we go on to agenda item number 5, which is consider management approaches for next year for the 2016 summer flounder, black sea bass, recreational fisheries, and this will require some action. As noted by Kirby in the meeting overview, as a reminder, addendum 25 for the FMP allowed for the use of ad hoc management approaches for black sea bass for the recreational fishery in 2014 and 2015. All right, and as he has noted for our benefit that the addendum expires at the end of this year. Therefore, If there's a desire on the part of the board to go in that direction again, we're going to need a motion to do so. If we do not desire to go in that direction, then we'll have coast-wide management measures in place for the recreational fishery for black sea bass in 2016. So with that said, let's start with black sea bass. Does anyone care to address this issue, perhaps by...
What we can do.
Let's do black sea bass first.
Okay.
All right, I'm a little bit ahead of myself. Kirby does have a brief presentation that addresses this specific black sea bass issue.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce. So, as Dr. Pierce mentioned, in addendum 25 that had both summer flounder and black sea bass regional management options, the board approved the ad hoc approach for 2014, and it had the provision of extending it an additional year into 2015. The board chose to do so at the joint council and commission meeting in December of last year. So, as Dr. Pierce noted, a new addendum is needed if the board wishes to continue ad hoc regional management in the black sea bass fishery for 2016. If not, there's as the FMP dictates, there will be the return to coast-wide management measures for 2016. So the board would need to initiate an addendum to extend the ad hoc regional approach into 2016.
All right, Kirby and I have summarized where we stand right now. Is there any board member care to make a motion? Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before a motion, I'd have a question about where we are, if I can proceed.
Go right ahead.
With that. So, under the last couple years, we've proceeding under this ad hoc mechanism, which has resulted in differing measures amongst many of the states. But there has been in place a federal waters measure that the southern states, Delaware and southward, have basically mirrored. If we were to not move forward with the ad hoc management measures, what is the process going to be for evaluation of a coast-wide measure for 2016 when we compare what our RHL is going to be for 2016 relative to what we harvest reportedly this year? What's that process? How will we evaluate what the federal measure will be?
So, commission and council staff annually meet around this time and into early November with the technical committee to work through what the council has to put forward as their coast-wide set of management measures. And then there's a series of kind of fallback measures that are put forward. The precautionary default is one that's used if a reduction, say, is needed and the states are not able to put together a set of measures that seem to constrain harvest to the recreational harvest limit or will achieve the reduction if needed. So council staff will work with commission staff and the technical committee to determine what a set of coast-wide measures would be needed to constrain harvest to the 2016 recreational harvest limit. One thing I wanted to note is that, and I might look to Tony to provide some more clarity on this, but there is the possibility through an emergency action to extend the provisions of an addendum for a certain amount of time, I believe about 6 months. So I might ask Tony to provide more clarity on it.
It's a provision that we allow in the ISFMB charter that allows us to extend an FMP for 6 months, and then if you are currently working on a document that would replace that action, then you can extend it for an additional 6 months. So it's not really emergency action. It's just an extension of an FMP or management document. So we could hold it. What it would allow us to do is hold over for a year as long as we initiate a document that would work on new action for the coming year. And I think that later on, the council is probably going to let the board know that they've shifted their priorities on the amendment that they're working on to black sea bass, so it could align up a little bit depending on what type of management actions get put into that document. It'll still leave us somewhere for 2017. I don't think that we'll have an amendment completed by the time that rolls around, but it would allow the board to think about the actions that they want to include in that addendum a little bit more thoroughly and longer than if we were to do something for the 2016 fishing year, because that would have to be moved along quite quickly.
So, Adam?
So just to follow up, a challenge historically that I'm familiar with is calculating expected harvest when you have a size limit that has been significantly more restrictive. In the case of black sea bass for the states north of New Jersey, you're talking about a size limit up to 1.5 inches greater. You're talking about a bag limit that's half of what the southern states are fishing under and what a coast-wide measure would be. I would expect that analysis would be difficult at best, and maybe that's even being kind to it. I understand that we're coming up to the time that that work would be put forth for review to the December meeting, and I'm just looking for some direction here about how that evaluation is going to take place and whether that evaluation can even take place in the time frame that we have leading up to the December meeting.
Adam, if I could ask the question you just asked, is that relative to whether you feel that we should proceed with ad hoc regional managements for 2016 or go with coastwide? Are you waiting for some analysis? Is that your question?
I wish I could directly answer that question. I'll just say that we're going to, I think is going to be a limited debate in short order about the black sea bass quota for 2016. We're going to have a harvest for 2015 that will be closer to our limit next year than what we would have had if that increase was not voted on by the council, and hopefully will take place here as well. I think that at least we're in a position to have discussion about coast-wide measures for 2016. If we didn't have that increase, I don't even think we'd be entertaining that discussion. I think the coast-wide measure for most states would be too draconian, but I think that that at least gets us close enough to have the discussion, to have the evaluations done, and again, just knowing the difficulty with calculating perhaps a 1.5 inch difference between a measure that states have had and what they may have moving forward. I just know the challenges with that, and I'm just looking for some indication. Are we in a position to even have meaningful discussion about a coast-wide measure, given the disparity that exists between some states right now and what that measure could potentially be with size and bag limit?
Tony, you have your hand on the microphone. That's a dangerous thing to do. Okay, Kirby.
Well, as I mentioned before, the technical committee is scheduled to meet in November in Providence to go through this, and as noted, we have had a technical committee meeting. It was about a week ago to, as I said, start fresh and re-examine how we've been looking at the recreational harvest data, both the ability to break that data out into more area-specific and mode-specific parcels. So that's something that the TC is trying to better evaluate. For sea bass, it's obviously posed a much more difficult challenge in trying to account for how changes in the abundance has affected the ability to do reductions differently than, say, for summer flounder. So it is definitely on the technical committee's agenda to address. All
right, board members. it would seem wise for us to make a decision regarding how we want to proceed in 2016 as soon as possible. The plan for this meeting is to make that decision. So the question of the board is, are you prepared to do that today, to make that decision today? And if indeed you are, would it mean that you want an addendum to continue the ad hoc management approaches, or just let the addendum expire and we go back to the coast-wide for 2016? So I look to the board for some guidance. David Simpson.
I think it makes sense to, keep the option of regional management on the table and initiate an addendum to consider that, and that process will take enough time that we'll have some insight from the technical committee's work, and we can make a decision at the end of the addendum process whether to stay with regional management or go to coastwide. So I'd move to initiate the addendum to extend ad hoc regional management for sea bass recreational fisheries in 2016.
Motion has been made by David Simpson. Do I have a second? Pat Augustine. All right, I will read the motion. All right, the motion is to initiate an addendum to extend ad hoc regional management for black sea bass recreational fisheries in 2016. The motion by Mr. Simpson, seconded by Mr. Augustine. Discussion on the motion. Tony?
I just want to point out that this is the 5th year in a row we've done this ad hoc regional management, and almost every time except for once the board has only done it for 1 year. We will not have a new amendment in 2017, so it would force us to go out for another round of public hearings and another management document if you make this date final 2016. We could have no sunset provision, so that would mean that it would just expire when we did a new management action. If the board is considering new management action in sync with the council, then that would be coming relatively quickly. You could have provisions to extend it through board action instead of having to do another addendum or end it right away. But it does require us to keep going through this cycle, which is a lot of staff time as well as a lot of money.
All right, Tony has offered up some words of caution regarding the duration and also the amount of money involved. Nevertheless, so I'll let you address the motion again, David.
Yeah, I think with that understanding, I'd modify the motion to say in 2016 and 2017. And again, we'll have the benefit of, is 2017 enough time? How much time do you need, Tony?
I mean, I guess the question is there a reason to have an end date? And knowing that it's until some further management action is initiated by the board. And that can be through an addendum, an amendment, either way. I guess the question is regional management not working for the states in a way that a sunset provision is necessary?
David, what's your pleasure?
Yeah, I think I appreciate that, but I'd also like to think that we've backed into management before. For next year we'll do this. When was that? Shortly after 1998 with summer flounder, and for the next 20 years you can't extract yourself from what you did out of convenience for 1 year. So I think I would say for 2016 and 2017, and hope in the next 2 years we can think about formalizing a strategy for managing the recreational black sea bass fishery. I want to stay away from the term allocate, because I think what we've learned is by the time you figure out how to do that fairly, the situation has changed and need to adjust it. So, but I would like to think we would get to that day that we would develop something that was more responsive to shifts in distribution of fish. When New Hampshire has half the black sea bass on the coast, I'm sure they want to be able to have an opportunity to fish some of it. So I would extend this to 2017.
All right, does the seconder agree with the modification to the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I agree.
All right, now let's assume if no one around the table objects, we will have it as 2016 and 17. All right. Are you objecting to that, Tom? Pardon me?
When we did this ad hoc management back in about 4 or 5 years ago, and we did it, I think, in Montauk, if I remember right, basically, New Jersey strongly objected to where our placement was in this region, because we said we would probably wind up reallocation New Jersey's fish to other states if we were looking by that, doing it state by state. And what has progressed over the years is just what has happened. The New England fishery has grown, and the catch, according to MRAPs, which is always questionable, has basically shrunk. And basically it has have a disastrous effect on the industry in New Jersey. And I don't see it going any better. We were supposed to be grouped with the South, and if we would have stayed in the South, we wouldn't have seen this redistribution that we've seen now. The fishery has grown up in Massachusetts and Connecticut and Rhode Island, and basically has affected the growth of the fishery in New Jersey. We've gone in the opposite direction because in order to stay at the size limit, which would have been the same in the southern region and not the northern region, we now have restricted seasons that are very, very difficult for New Jersey. I mean, we had a long period of time we had no summer flounder you could fish on and no fluke and no sea bass that you could fish on. So I had this, we voted against this when it was done. We've never felt comfortable with it, and I still have problems with it.
All right, I did read the motion into the record. Therefore, if we're going to make it 2017, it would have to be a motion to amend to make it 2016 and 17. So does anyone care to make that motion to amend, or we leave it as it is, 2016? Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to amend the motion to include and 2017. All the other language to be the same.
All right, so the motion to amend is to include 2017. Is there a second to the motion to amend? Okay, Bill Adler has seconded the motion to amend. Any discussion on the motion to amend to make it 2 years? Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion to amend, please signify by raising your hand, unless you want to caucus first. You do? All right, we'll caucus a few minutes to caucus, a minute to caucus. That's what I get for reading the motion into the record. Are you all set, New Jersey? All right, I'm going to assume we are now prepared to vote on the motion to amend. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Those opposed, please raise your hand. Any no votes? All right, the motion to amend is unanimous. Okay, 12 in favor, no opposition, no null votes. All right, now on the main motion. Once again, to initiate an addendum to extend ad hoc regional management for black sea bass recreational fisheries in 2016 and 2017. Discussion on the motion. Adam.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. So in the past, that addendum has included a status quo, or which isn't really status quo anymore. The original addendum included a status quo option for coast-wide discussion. Is that going to be an option in this addendum with the motion worded as it is, or is this basically only, what other option? I would assume it would be, because I don't know what other option we would have if we didn't vote in favor of that, but I think it would just behoove us to be clear that we have that as an option still.
Just to clarify, so Adam, you're looking for an option in the addendum to have status quo management measures relative to 2015?
No, clarity that not pursuing ad hoc measures would result in coast-wide management, and having that clarity in the addendum. That's what I think I'm looking for.
That would be one of the possible outcomes. Because if we don't approve a new addendum establishing the ad hoc regional measures, we go back to coastwide. All right, further discussion on this motion. Michael.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask a question, because I'm a little confused about including 2017. The way I'm understanding that is it's not really relevant exactly to this motion, but what would happen in December. If the commission were to, or the board were to adopt in December ad hoc regional management for 2016, would that lock the board into ad hoc regional management for 2017 as well? And the reason I ask the question is we're going to be getting a new black sea bass assessment about a year from now. And I'm wondering whether the board will have the recourse following that assessment to modify its recreational management approach for 2017.
I can turn to staff on this, but I suspect that the board can make whatever changes are necessary to prepare for 2017 if conditions merit it. We can revisit the issue. All right, on the motion, any further comment? All right, the need for caucus, I assume? Is there a need? All right, there is no need for a caucus. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by raising your hand. All right, we have 12 in favor. Okay, any opposition? Any no votes? All right, the motion passes 13 to 0. All right, motion passes. Next, the next item on our agenda would be summer flounder management for 2016. So I'll turn to Kirby for his presentation.
So it's the same, similar situation to what we were facing with black sea bass a year ago. So in October of 2014, the board initiated the draft addendum 26 to develop alternative regional management approaches for summer flounder in 2015. That addendum 26 was approved in February, extending status quo regional management from 2014 into 2015, with the ability to extend it an additional year up to 2016. So the board can extend the 2015 regional management alignment that was in the addendum into 2016 without an addendum. An addendum is needed if different regional management alignments are preferred in 2016 and beyond.
All right, that's simply stated. Questions of Kirby? Pat? No? Okay. All right. So no action is required on this for 2016 unless, as Kirby has indicated, we are dissatisfied with the current management strategy or with state-by-state conservation equivalency. If both of those approaches are fine, then we need not take any action for 2016. Bill Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, didn't the wording just say it may extend another year without an addendum, but does the board have to say, yeah, do it? Do we have to at least go ahead and say, yeah, we want to extend it?
Yeah, that was at least the way it proceeded last year with black sea bass, and that decision to extend it was made at the December meeting, this December joint meeting.
All right, so in other words, there should be probably a motion says yes, extend it because we can. Is that in order?
For the sake of clarity, I suppose that it would be in order. So do you care to make that motion, Bill?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we extend, as the previous addendum says, that we can extend it for the year 2016. Is that what you want?
I'll tell you in a second.
He's putting it up.
All right. This is the motion we suspect you have made, Bill. Is it as you intended? All right, so I will... A motion has been made by Bill Adler. Is there a second to the motion? David Borden has seconded the motion. I'll now read it into the record. The motion is moved to extend the provision of addendum 26 for 2016, summer flounder regional management. Motion by Mr. Adler, seconded by Mr. Borden. Is there any discussion on the motion? Tom.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce. I would like some discussion on in the supplemental materials, the Delaware Bay white paper that Brandon Muffley had presented. If not, if there's no discussion on that, I have a motion to substitute. Is that in order right now to substitute?
Before you make a motion to substitute, you referenced a document that we have as background material to prepare us for this meeting. It would be helpful if you, before you make the motion, if you could, for the benefit of all here, explain exactly what you have offered up as a suggestion in that document.
Certainly. With the approval of regional management for summer flounder recreational fisheries, it solved the problem that existed in Sandy Hook, Raritan Bays with New York and New Jersey, and it solved that problem, created another problem down south in Delaware Bay, created a problem of not only size limit discrepancies of a 2-inch size limit difference between New Jersey and Delaware in the same water body, but also as far as season length goes, from a 128-day season in New Jersey to a year-round season. So we're looking to continue regional management, except having options available through an addendum process that address this size discrepancy in Delaware Bay. July 23rd of this year, we met with New Jersey staff and commissioners, met with Delaware staff and commissioners to talk about this. We had a good discussion, came up with some options or alternatives for today, possibly. And basically, through staff, New Jersey division staff legwork, They basically demonstrated that the New Jersey fishery in Delaware Bay is basically the same as the Delaware fishery in Delaware Bay as far as the landings go, the size frequency goes, and the catch per unit effort. So in that respect, I'll either field any questions, or if Brandon would like to come up, I would ask you to give him the opportunity to continue this justification.
With that said, Tom, I suspect it would be appropriate for you to make a motion, if you care to make it now.
Yes, I do. Thank you. I move to substitute to continue regional management measures in 2016 as currently constructed, while initiating a draft addendum to establish new Delaware Bay regional management options for the 2016 recreational summer flounder season. Options for consideration in the addendum will be only...
Can you just slow it up a little bit, Tom?
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have... Does...
You have it.
You don't have it?
If you could just read it again, Tom, from where it ends.
I'll keep reading. I'll repeat. So after my last sentence, options for consideration in the addendum will only be for Delaware Bay, and all other regions will remain as currently constructed, including all other waters of New Jersey, implementing the same management measures as New York and Connecticut.
All right. Please look at that motion that's on the screen and tell us if it is the motion you've just made.
Yes, it is.
All right. We have a motion by Tom. Is there a second to the motion? Rob O'Reilly has seconded the motion. All right. I will now read the motion to substitute. Before I do, Tony looks a little angst. Go ahead, Tony.
It's just the way the motion is worded, where you say that we would continue regional management while initiating a draft addendum. This draft addendum, the proposal that New Jersey is giving is different than what the regional management is. So it's either you're going to do a draft addendum to replace the makeup of the regional management, or you're doing regional management as we did it last year. So I think that if you're proposing a draft addendum, you would, having that first bit of the sentence doesn't quite work.
With that said, I'm going to have to rule it out of order unless you can refine that language to address Tony's concern. Go ahead, Tom.
Yes, I'll refine that language then. Yes, I move to substitute to initiate a draft addendum to establish regional summer flounder regional management for 2016 that includes addressing a new Delaware Bay regional management options for the 2016 regional summer flounder season. Let's see.
I'm hesitating a bit until staff has a chance to discuss this. Tony, do you have... okay, with the board's forbearance, if you'd bear with us for a bit. I know this is an issue of great concern to Tom, so we'll be careful with this.
You're still... Okay.
You think we're there, Tony? All right. Tony has reworked this a bit so we don't end up with a conflict between addendum and some other action. So is this revised wording, Tom, satisfactory to you?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Rob, is it satisfactory to you?
Mostly. Is the seconder allowed to add a comment?
No.
Okay.
All right, anyways, okay, now we have a motion on the board. I will read this motion. Move to substitute to initiate a draft addendum to establish a 2016 regional recreational summer flounder management. This is a mess, isn't it? Move to substitute to initiate a draft addendum to establish 2016 regional recreational summer flounder management options, including a regional option for Delaware Bay. Options for consideration in the addendum will only be for Delaware Bay, and all other regions will remain as currently constructed, including all other waters of New Jersey, implementing the same management measures as New York and Connecticut. Motion by Mr. Baum and seconded by Mr. O'Reilly. So comments on the motion. Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess it's a comment and a question. Given the order that we are considering here and substituting for the extending the provisions of addendum, what's that, 26, my concern is that, well, I guess one of the questions would be, through the development of this new draft addendum, would we essentially be extending all provisions in addendum 26, with the exception of these options that would be included, which would be Delaware Bay only? I don't want to get to the point I completely support that. I support this proposal and think that it's in the best intention. It follows along the lines of the objectives of the regional management approach that we've worked for years to accomplish. I just have the concern that by initiating this draft, we're not being clear that while it states in there that all other options will remain the same, is that the same as it just the extension of the provisions of addendum 26? That's my question. Thank you.
So straightforward, no. Part of as staff explained to New Jersey, is that in creating Delaware Bay specific measures, so that you're having part of the state of New Jersey with measures that are similar to Delaware, but the rest of the state is not. Under conservation equivalency, at least regional management that we have it defined there, for a state to be consistent with the other states and their measures, that state, if it has different measures in different parts of the state, has to then become its own region. So New Jersey would becoming its own region under at least one of the proposals that was put forward. The other would create two state-specific regions in this area. One would be Delaware, would possibly would be its own region, and New Jersey would be its own region. So in that way, this is not carrying forward the status quo for the rest of the regional alignment.
In addition, this does initiate an addendum as opposed to the original motion, which would be to just let it continue as is without our having to initiate another addendum. So this is a significant action on the part of the board relative to workload, expense, all of that, notwithstanding the merits of the motion itself. So Kirby has provided his perspective relative to your question, Michael. To the motion on the board, Rob O'Reilly.
So I think last time around, last year, we had some similar proposals, and a few came in late, and I think option 5 was what we looked at last year, and New Jersey really did not get a discussion. And I think that probably after looking at the information that was presented to us and had time to look at it, everyone had time to look at it, that it's not only worth discussion, but now we can sort of see the dilemma. And I just hope that we, as we go forward with this, that New Jersey and Delaware have chosen the 4 options that really are the crux of what could go forward. So that's a question I have about this overall too. On the 4 options, is that going to be pretty much it, or is that something to be decided once we come back and go through this again?
Bill Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Something simple is getting complicated. It's not that I'm against anything here, but also on, if you're coming back in February with an addendum that then has to go out to public hearing and you're adding all types of things, is this going to actually be able to be done for 2016?
So I was just conferring with Dr. Pierce. In terms of the timetable, in order for the addendum to get approved, similar to last year, for enough time for the states to implement the management measures, would need to have the addendum initiated at this meeting so that the draft addendum could be brought to the joint meeting in December and then go out for public comment. And that way you would have public comment through the winter, and then that could be presented for final action at the February meeting. Delaying the addendum would likely jeopardize the ability to get on staff's end to be able to get it done in time for the 2016 season.
Okay,
Roy.
thank you.
Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom summarized correctly that Delaware met with New Jersey to discuss this suite of management options that you see in our briefing materials under the supplemental materials. While agreeing to meet with New Jersey and agreeing in principle upon the desirability of consistent regulations for shared jurisdictions like Delaware Bay, it was pretty clear from that meeting, and pretty clear to me, that we agreed that option 4 among Brandon's options was the one least objectionable to the state of Delaware. The other 3 options, I'm afraid that the way this motion to amend is, this substitute motion is worded, I'm afraid the other 3 options are precluded, and I wasn't sure that was the intent of the maker of the motion. Specifically, it says options for consideration in the addendum will only be for Delaware Bay, and all other regions will remain as currently constructed. If you look at the other 3 options, it sort of precludes them by saying it will be only for Delaware Bay and all the other options will remain as constructed. So if it's the maker of the motion's intent that it sort of locks us into the number 4 option, then we would have no objection. But that's why I wanted to see what his intent was in this regard. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Roy. Perhaps the best way to proceed, in light of the nature of the discussion around the table, is to vote this motion up or down. And if it is voted down, then someone can make another motion that would be specific to the interests expressed by you, Roy, that have been expressed in the document and we find in our supplemental materials. I'll take a few more questions on the motion. Lewis, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to bring up an issue that I think is important for consideration when looking at this addendum and trying to do some, area jurisdiction models. We've been talking in the past about the size limits for some flounder. And what we're finding in North Carolina and the southern states is that the vast majority of our harvest is female fish. And many of those fish are not having the opportunity to spawn. And as we continue to ratchet up size limits, which I know we're not talking about here, but this needs to be on the record for consideration, maybe not in this addendum, but as we move forward, we need to start lowering these size limits down so that we start harvesting more male fish. Right now, this quota is being taken up by all female fish. And if we look at some of our other species, it's going to be very difficult for us to maintain and not have these huge swings in quota reductions that we're facing right now for next year if we don't start looking at some of the biology of the fish. And I would like for the technical committee at least to be looking at the implications of having some kind of a slot limit or lowering the size limit that would allow for that harvest of more males. And I'm tempted to try to add it here, but I know it probably wouldn't go anywhere. But I do feel like it's an important issue for the record. We're getting ready to do it in southern flounder in North Carolina. We think we're going to look into doing something like this in North Carolina, and that's going to cause a huge disparity in our size limits there. And we've seen with the increasing size limits, even at 15 inches in North Carolina, our harvest has basically gone to nothing. So there's not something needs to happen with the size limits as we move forward with southern flounder.
All right, thank you. I'll take one other comment on the motion. Tom, to the motion.
Yeah, Dave, I think the wording needs to be adjusted a little bit on this motion. And what I like to do, and we've done this many times before, is to take a 3 or 4 minute break, let Delaware and New Jersey sit down and get the language straight and straighten out the language of the motion and see if we can get this motion done so we don't have to go through the whole thing again. So we just could take a couple of minute break to sit down and figure this out.
I'm not sure you're going to be able to figure it out in 2 to 3 minutes. As a consequence, I'm not going to take a break. So, Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then thanks for picking me once again. For comment, I'm still stuck on what happens in the event that this draft addendum goes out as intended for Delaware Bay issues, and then ultimately there aren't fish available to resolve the issue, or the issues, the options that are under for consideration aren't acceptable, and we end up with some status quo. Essentially, the addendum dies. What happens then? Because in that case, we have not extended the provisions of Addendum 26 for 2016, and from my understanding, we would default back to conservation equivalency, since the Addendum 26 will be behind us, and we would not have extended it. I would have much preferred and would support wholeheartedly this substitute motion had we extended the provisions of Addendum 26 as the backdrop, as our backstop for what happens in the event that this current draft addendum would in some way die. So just my thoughts on how I would have felt more comfortable in moving forward. Thanks.
If I may, Michael, are you suggesting that we vote the substitute down, that we approve the main motion, and that someone make another motion that would be specific to the point you just raised?
That's what, and I haven't caucused yet, but that's what I think we should do. At least put the backstop there for regional management in 2016 as it was in 2015 in the event that this draft doesn't gather all the steam that it needs to be supported fully by this board in February.
I think Michael has offered up a way forward. I agree with it. So my suggestion to the board is we vote on this motion to substitute, and then follow the procedure or the approach that has been suggested by Mike. Is there opposition to that suggestion? Okay, David Simpson.
I understand the logic, and I think we all want to try to get to the same place and trying to figure out how to get there. But if we extend Addendum 26, the way I understand it, that precludes the discussion of doing something with Delaware Bay. And when I read the substitute motion, it's clear to me the intent is to leave everything in regional management as is for another year, with the exception of a consideration of Delaware Bay and doing something nuanced there. So I was comfortable with the substitute motion, and I'm concerned that if we do it as Mike has suggested, that we close the door on a Delaware Bay resolution. Maybe Tony has another perspective.
Tony.
I guess the hard part is that if you add the Delaware Bay region in there, then you have to change your management measures within your regions because you got to take those fish from somewhere to put the fish into the Delaware Bay. So you're not keeping status quo in your regions anymore because you're changing your management measures within your regions. So that's the difficult part in there where everyone keeps saying, well, stay status quo in our other regions. Well, you can't stay status quo in your other regions because you got to get your fish to be able to harvest smaller size limits and a longer time period in Delaware Bay from what New Jersey was originally harvesting under the other regs for the whole of New Jersey. So yes, you can say we're going to do regional management until we make a change, if you make your change to your regions, but it's not status quo.
All right, as it stands, we have a substitute motion on the board, and we've discussed that substitute motion. It's time to vote on that substitute. Is there a need for a caucus? There is no need for a caucus? All right. All those in favor of the motion to substitute, please raise your hand. Those opposed? Any no votes? There we go. What, was there a no vote? No, okay. All right, the motion to substitute fails. Any abstentions? Okay. All right. All right, the motion to substitute fails on a vote of 5 to 6. Back on the main motion, David Borden.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not having a dog in the fight, would we get to the same position that I think the intent of all parties is if we took the main motion and at the end of it, right after regional management, just added with the exception of Delaware Bay? And then that would set the stage for a subsequent motion.
Go ahead, Kirby.
So something that I think should be try to clarify, the regional alignment in addendum 26 is what this would be extending. And the regional alignment is Connecticut through New Jersey having the same management measures, Delaware down through Virginia having the same management measures. To make changes to the Delaware Bay state's management measures, even if they are area specific, then alters what the regional alignment is. So it's not the ability to extend that status quo. You're creating new regional alignments. So.
All right, so that's the key point that creates new regional alignments, and I can't explain exactly what those alignments would be. That would unfold, I guess, as further work was done on the approach. All right, so that's the motion on the board. Further discussion on the motion. Pat Augustine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very lively discussion. I think it's an important discussion. I'm glad that we did what we did on that. It seems to me that if we're going to create a new region, we've got to create a new addendum to address that separately by itself, deal with it as an issue. And it would seem to me that if the state that's interested in doing that might want to go forward with your approval, Mr. Chairman, and put that on the table and then let the board take action based on that. But this is the right approach at this point in time. Thank you.
Any other comments on the motion? I knew New Jersey would have more comments. Tom.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce. I'm just trying to get a handle on this as far as what staff has explained to us. If the main motion passes, is there a chance, as I'm interpreting it, there is no chance to address Delaware Bay. Is that correct? For this year?
As indicated before, to have Delaware Bay specific or even new regions in the Delaware Bay area, you'd need a new addendum. In passing this motion, that would pretty much void the need for a new addendum.
Tom.
Just my comment is, then we failed the intent of addendum 26 to address, regional management as far as solving the issues of the, disparity amongst regions and water bodies.
Yeah, I'm trying to think this through, and I'm trying to be sensitive to timelines and staff concerns. If this motion was to pass, all right, we're just extending the provisions into 2016. Does the board still have an opportunity at its next meeting to act on anything that might be offered up by New Jersey as a refinement to what's been discussed so far, and would be consistent with some of the concerns expressed by Delaware? That's my concern. That's my question to staff. Tony.
We could work, if it's the interest of the board, to see something in basically an addendum format. We could work with New Jersey and bring it forward at the joint meeting, and the board could decide whether or not that is something that they would want to consider as an option, and then decide if they want to take it out for public comment. But it's something that we would need to have basically in a very tight format so that we could turn it around immediately.
Well, my suggestion is for us to go in that direction. I think everyone around this table is sensitive to New Jersey's concerns and, of course, Delaware's concerns as well. So, okay, with that said, I'll go to Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to be clear that I was prior to the vote that we just took on the substitute, I thought it was pretty clear that we would consider this addendum, consider this extension. And in my mind, the extension is nothing more than the continuation of something that's already in place. A new addendum could be created, and this is just my opinion, it could be initiated a minute from now that would override the current addendum that we're working under, which is 26. And I assume that this proposal from New Jersey working with Delaware is just that. It's an addendum that takes the place, it would be addendum 27. It would take the place of 26. And in that addendum, all of this same concepts and everything about the regional approach that we've already put forth in addendum 26 could be in there, with the exception of some options for Delaware Bay. I did state that I was supportive of the proposal, and I think the actions between New York, or I'm so used to saying New York and New Jersey, but the actions between New Jersey and Delaware, it's what the intention of this regional approach is, and therefore I would hope that we could figure out some method to get to that point in time for when this board meets in February to have some final product to consider. Thank you.
David Borden.
Just a question, Mr. Chairman. The two states have the right to work together, put together a proposal, and submit it under conservation equivalency to do exactly what they're talking about?
I don't believe they do. Obviously, they have opportunities to collectively construct an option or options they feel are acceptable to themselves, and then push it with or offer it up at our next meeting, for example, offer it up at our next meeting as a regional approach, or for an addendum for a different regional approach for 2016. All right, time is passing. We have more on our agenda, so I'm going to take a few more questions, and then we have to decide what to do. But Rob O'Reilly.
Yeah, I just think we've backed ourselves into a pretty tight corner here, and we've had 2 years of regional management, and now we're looking at a motion to extend the provision of addendum 26, and I say, well, what does that really mean? Does that literally mean everything stays the same? I heard Tony talking about shifting fish once you bring in Delaware Bay options, but we could be shifting fish even with this. So I think the way out of here is what was mentioned earlier, that this motion can pass, but it doesn't preclude another motion bringing in the Delaware Bay options. And if the public gets confused by that, well, it's because I think all of us were confused in the way we went about this, perhaps, but, you know, we can't help that. Some of this is being done as we talk. So, you know, it's kind of a tough situation, and it really shouldn't be that the Delaware Bay options or those 4 options don't get reviewed pretty carefully with a chance to have one of them pass.
All right, I'm going to call the question with no objection. All right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. Those in opposition? Okay. Well, we didn't caucus, but I think that there would be 0 no votes if I could recall the past motion. So, any abstentions? All right. The motion to extend the provision of addendum 26 for 2016 summer flounder regional management passes on a vote of 7 in favor and 2 opposed. 9 in favor and 2 opposed. Any further action on this issue? Adam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the debate that has been had around the table today. The issue of the Delaware Bay discrepancy was something that was brought forth early on in the addendum process with options that were brought forth, and people had seen them before. This was nothing new. The original addendum for regional management spoke about addressing these regional discrepancies. Appreciate Delaware coming forward to work with New Jersey in the spirit of the commission this summer to work to find a solution. New Jersey then worked with board leadership and staff to prepare them, include the white paper and the supplemental materials, have a motion drawn up. So I think it's all clear that we know the goal that we're working towards, and there's certainly been discussion about that today. With all of that groundwork here and talking about a way out of here that addresses that, I now move to initiate an addendum to address the discrepancy in regulations that exists in Delaware Bay. I'm going to leave it very simple. We've had a lot of discussion in the past about smidges and concepts. I think that the discussion, the record clearly shows where we're going with this. And I'll stop talking there. I'll wait for a second to that. And if I need to further discuss the motion, I will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, a motion has been made. And I'll wait to ensure that this is your wording, Madam.
Yeah, again, in the spirit, I'm just going to keep it very simple. I think the record that we've set forth in the last half hour clearly states the direction that we're going.
Is there a second to the motion? David Simpson has seconded the motion. So, move to initiate an addendum to address the discrepancies in measures within Delaware Bay. Motion by Mr. Nowalski, second by Mr. Simpson. Discussion on the motion. All right. We'll vote on the motion. Is there a need to caucus? I see no need to caucus. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, is all opposed? Any null votes? Any abstentions? So the motion carries. What's the vote? So unanimous. All right. So I assume, therefore, that there'll be further discussion between New Jersey and Delaware, especially regarding the document that's already been worked on, so that staff and then this board will be able to benefit from whatever you decide is agreeable to both states. And that's my assumption. All right. Rob, question?
No, I'd like to make a comment since you bypassed my waved hand earlier, but that's okay. On black sea bass and summer flounder, I know that people work hard. All of us try and work hard, but I do want to recognize the gentlemen who are here today from the Mid-Atlantic Council in a different light, and I think most of you know it could have been much more extensive and intensive had we had, say, a 49% reduction in summer flounder, and at the same time a 21% increase in black sea bass. Those things don't just happen. They take a lot of effort, and I think that I'm not privy to all the ins and outs, but I know that a lot of work was done to get us into that situation, and so I think the partnership is something we ought to really be appreciative of with the Mid-Atlantic Council.
Yeah, I'll echo that, Rob. Thank you for making that point. Mid-Atlantic Council leadership has done quite a bit for the benefit of all concerned. Certainly what they have initiated, working with their SSC and also with the National Marine Fisheries Service, has been much appreciated to minimize some of the impact that we otherwise would have experienced with summer flounder and, of course, with black sea bass. And we're about to address the black sea bass issue. So next on the agenda is number 6. This is review and consider approval of the 2016 Black Sea Bass Benchmark Stock Assessment Terms of Reference. This is an action item. I turn to Kirby for a summary of where we stand with that.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce. These are the draft terms of reference for the 2016 benchmark stock assessment for black sea bass. That stock assessment is scheduled to be done in the end of 2016, approximately November, December. For the board's consideration today is approving these terms of reference. They will then go to the NRCC where they will be officially approved for use in the assessment. So I will walk through the terms of reference now. The first term of reference is to evaluate the distribution, movement, and potential for spatial structure of the stock, the ability of existing data to support alternative spatial structure, and their consequences for the stock assessment. The second term of reference is to estimate catch from all sources, including landings and discard, characterize the uncertainty in these sources of data, evaluate available information on discard mortality, and if appropriate, update mortality rates applied to discard components of the catch. Describe the spatial and temporal distribution of the fishing effort. Term of reference 3 is to present the survey data being used in the assessment, the indices of abundance, the recruitment, state surveys, age-length data, and to investigate the utility of fishery-dependent indices as measures of relative abundance. Characterize the uncertainty and any bias in these sources of data. Term of reference 4 is to consider the consequences of environmental factors on the estimates of abundance or relative indices derived from the survey. Term of reference 5 is to investigate implications of hermaphroditic life history on the stock assessment model, and if possible, to incorporate parameters to account for hermaphrodism. Term of reference 6 is to estimate annual fishing mortality, recruitment, and stock biomass, both total and spawning stock, using measures that are appropriate to the assessment model for the time series, which is integrating results from terms of reference 4 and 5, and estimate their uncertainty. To include historical retrospective analysis and past projection and performance evaluation to allow a comparison with more recent assessment results. Term of reference 7 is to estimate biological reference points. Those are your biological reference points such as BMSY, B threshold, FMSY, and MSY, including defining biological reference points for spatially explicit areas if appropriate, and provide estimates of their uncertainty. If analytic model-based estimates are unavailable, consider recommending alternative measurable proxies for the biological reference points. Comment on the appropriateness of existing biological reference points and the new, updated, redefined or alternative biological reference points. Term of reference 8 is to evaluate the stock status with respect to the new model or new models corresponding to spatial units developed for the peer review. Term of reference 9 is a three-part. It's to develop approaches and apply them to conduct the stock projections. The first is to provide numerical annual projections 3 to 5 years in the statistical distribution, probability of density function of the overfishing level that fully incorporates observation, process, and model uncertainty. It has a note here about the appendix. This document was included in the briefing materials, so the appendix is with your briefing materials that are with this draft TORs. Each projection should estimate and report annual probabilities of exceeding threshold biological reference points for F and probabilities for falling below the threshold biological reference points for biomass. Use a sensitivity analysis approach in which a range of assumptions about the most important uncertainties in the assessment are considered. The terminal year, abundance, variability in recruitment, definition of biological reference points for black sea bass. The second part is to, for term of reference 9, is to comment on which projections seem most realistic, consider major uncertainties in the assessment, as well as the sensitivity of the projections to various assumptions. And the third part is to describe the stock's vulnerability to becoming overfished and how it would affect the choice of the acceptable biological catch. The last TOR, TOR 10, is to review and evaluate and report on the status of the SARC working group research recommendations listed in the recent SARC reviewed assessments and review panel reports, and to identify any new research recommendations. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.
Thank you, Kirby. That's a very comprehensive and detailed list of terms of reference, and if I was the black sea bass stock assessment scientist, I would be shaking in my boots. It's a tall order, but a lot of necessary initiatives, investigations as part of these terms of reference. In the interest of time, I would hope that there won't be too much discussion or questions on these terms of reference. We only have, well, half an hour, a little less than half an hour for the rest of our business. So if anything's pressing, please raise your hand. Lewis.
Question for Kirby, I guess, is the work I think that Gary Shepard was doing with all the tagging databases and the information that's been leaking out on that about the south of Hatteras and north of Hatteras mixing. Is that in the terms of reference somewhere, and will that be a discussion point for the assessment?
Yes, it will definitely be a point of discussion for the terms or for the assessment. There are, as it's indicated on the first TOR, there's multiple models that are going to be evaluated, and so his tagging data is being looked at both in terms of how it can be fed into a number of different models and also how to be treated separately.
Just a real quick follow-up. So the issue of stock mixing, though, will be addressed as well. I mean, not just for F estimates, but some of the reports are indicating that we're getting recaptures from north of Hatteras fish, south of Hatteras, to a fair degree. And if that's the case, then that's going to throw a few monkey wrenches into our assessment results.
Yes, it's definitely something that will be looked at by the assessment, given the management unit, as you know, having the divide at Cape Hatteras results in the need to evaluate landings both north and south, and so the tagging data will be important for both evaluating that and in terms of biomass estimates for the northern stock, or the previously understood northern stock.
Okay, I would appreciate a motion to approve the 2016 Black Sea Bass Stock Assessment Term of Reference. Lewis has made that motion. Is there a second to the motion? Emerson has seconded the motion. So the motion is to approve the 2016 Black Sea Bass Stock Assessment Terms of Reference. Well, all right. Motion made by Lewis and seconded by Emerson. Discussion on the motion? All right, I see none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Oh, thank you. Is there any opposition? Okay, I suspect there are no null votes or abstentions, so it's unanimous. On to number 7. reconsider the 2016-17 Black Sea bass quotas. This will be a final action. This is final action, and when we get to it, when a motion is made, it'll have to be a roll call vote. So with that said, I'll turn to Kirby, who will give us an overview as to what exactly has happened.
So this is kind of has two parts to it. There's the revised Black Sea bass commercial quota and recreational harvest limit for 2016. The other element is the commercial landings from 2014 that need to be evaluated for overages relative to the quota that can then be applied to the 2016 quota or revised quota. But I'll go through this very quickly for you all. So briefly, in August, the board and council met and decided to approve the recreational harvest limit and quotas for 2016 and 2017 for black sea bass. In September, the SSC met and conducted a peer review of a data-limited approach presented by Jason McNamee of the technical committee that they then evaluated and came up with a new ABC, acceptable biological catch, for 2016 and 2017. At the council's October meeting, they approved that new ABC and subsequently new commercial quotas and recreational harvest limits for 2016 and 2017. Those numbers are a 2.71 million pound commercial quota and a 2.88 million pound recreational harvest limit. So I have up also what the initial quota state by state would be for 2016 based off of that revised coastwide quota, but note that this does not account for any overages from 2014. So the board can consider the revised 2016 commercial quota and recreational harvest limits for black sea bass at this point. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.
Questions for Kirby? All right. And by the way, thanks to all of the staff that were involved in putting together the analysis and the logic for dealing with data poor stocks. So Jason McNamee from Rhode Island was involved in that, had a very lead role. I think Steve Cadron was involved in that, and I lose track of the other individuals who were involved, but I don't have the document in front of me. Anyways, thanks to them for all their work on this, and thanks to the Mid-Atlantic Council for embracing it, and the SSC as well. All right, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the revised black sea bass commercial quota and recreational harvest limit for 2016 and 2017. Motion made by Michael Weesey. Is there a second to the motion? Rob O'Reilly. All right. Discussion on the motion. This is real controversial, I know. No discussion on the motion. All right. Is there a need for a caucus? I see none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand.
Dr. Pierce, it's a roll call vote, so if there's no objection, then it'll be good, and it needs to be 2/3 majority as well. So, but if no one objects, then we don't need to do the full roll call.
I said it was a roll call. I forget what I said. All right. With that indicated, is there any objection to the motion? There is no objection to the motion. There is an objection to the motion. National Marine Fisheries Service objects to the. Go ahead, Michael.
We would abstain on the motion, so consider that as you will.
I'm only teasing, Michael. All right. So, with that abstention, logically offered up by the National Marine Fisheries Service, there is no opposition to the motion. Therefore, the motion passes. So we have approved the revised black sea bass commercial quota and recreational harvest limit for 2016 and 17. Next on the agenda is discussion. Okay, Kirby has brought me up short. He has something to add. Important to add. Go ahead.
So, as I mentioned before, the second part to the revised 2016 quota is trying to account for the overages in previous years. So I was going to quickly run through the current situation for the board to offer guidance to staff. The quota is administered on the coastwide level. The commission administers a state-by-state quota, and in 2014, the coastwide quota was 2.17 million pounds. Towards the end of 2014, we came close to, or it was projected that we were going to come close to the quota earlier than expected, and there was a move to possibly close federal waters. NOAA decided not to, given the timing and administrative process. So at this point, the staff is evaluating the coastwide overages from 2014 to be applied to 2016, and the reason why it isn't applied to the next year, it wasn't applied in 2015, is because of the timing. We don't get landings finalized from the states until the middle of the year, and at that point it's usually too late to adjust the current year's quotas. So staff, ASMFC staff and NOAA staff have identified discrepancies between the state reported landings and those landings that come out of the safest federal dealer reports. The difference between those summed totals is between less than a 1% overage, and which is approximately 171 pounds, and about a 4.68% overage of the 2014 quota, which is approximately 100,000 pounds. So I have up here the landings by the safest database first that indicates what those state overages would be relative to their quota. Again, the quota is on a state-by-state level administered by the commission. It's not recognized by NOAA. And the second is what the landings are that are being reported by the states. When it comes to evaluating the two, the differences has amounted to a bit more than 100,000 pounds, about 129,000 pounds. And this is, again, summing across to, as absolute numbers, what the difference is between the two reporting methods. So when it comes to assessing that overage on a state-by-state level, when we know that there's been a coastwide overage, addendum 20 outlines, which was done in 2009, outlines how that reconciliation process happens. The basic way forward is you go off of the proportion of what the state is allocated and then apply that proportion to their overage and then determine how much they need to reduce in the subsequent year. So then for next steps from the board, staff is seeking guidance on how to move forward in the specification process for 2016, specifically what data should be used for determining final 2014 landings. I will note that it's been an ongoing process that Commission and NOAA staff have been working on. We've been getting closer to what we think is a more correct number, but in the absence of a total agreement yet, we wanted to get more guidance from the board on how to move forward. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.
All right, Kirby has laid out the question being, what % reduction do we take? Do we use ASMFC database or the NOAA fisheries outcome regarding the landings? Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't want to offer a suggestion yet. I just wanted to make a point here that I believe that there are some major data concerns that need to be addressed before actions taken on a state regarding what is showing up in these different databases. Specifically, if I look up there and I look at my state and see that we've got a 55,000 pound difference in quota and catch. Well, in Maryland, we have 12 permit holders who divide the catch-up and fish under an ITQ. Now, I know these guys can often push the limit of their ITQ, and I think they have a 50-pound tolerance on that quota limit, but the thought that we have exceeded the catch by 55,000 pounds is not believable. There has to be something in there, and I've just learned an hour ago after questioning staff that within the ASMFC landings database, we are finding duplicative records, which would suggest that just within the database itself, there are some issues that need to be fixed before we move forward. So I wanted to get that on the record and to let everybody know that when I look at some of those numbers and I look at all of the 55 is flashing on the screen right there, 55,000. It's not that we're managing in a way to allow for something like that to take place. I think it's not reflecting the true landings of the states, and I would hope that we spend the time to resolve those issues before actions taken on a particular state. Thanks.
Are you suggesting that we postpone action on this particular question, subject to further review and reconciliation of the database? Is that what you were suggesting, Michael?
Well, what I heard was that ASMFC staff are still working with the states to resolve some of these discrepancies and these concerns that's what I'm hearing, that we're still, and I know my staff are still working on trying to resolve the issues at the ASMFC landings level. If I had to suggest anything, I would suggest that we use the ASMFC landings information rather than the NOAA landings information for, I think, we might have a little easier time working through that database. But at this point, it would be very difficult to have a recommendation there's going to be some action taken on states based on data that I know are wrong. Thank you.
Okay, Tony.
I think, Mike, what we're seeking, I think Kirby has identified and sent emails to TC members and to states already saying you have a different landing value than what NOAA Fisheries has in their books. And so we have directed the states to work with NOAA Fisheries in order to resolve that number. The Commission cannot resolve that number with GARFO for you. We can provide you any information and support in that sense, but that final resolution needs to be with GARFO. If there are states that cannot come to resolution with GARFO, we are seeking guidance from you as to what number we should be using. But acknowledging, as Kirby said in the memo, that if we use a number that is different than what GARFO has, in 2016, we will have two different sets of total quota numbers, and some states will have a different quota than what the federal fishermen will be fishing on, because the state's numbers for the most part are lower than what GARFO has listed. So we won't take as much of an overage out of certain states' quotas, and so therefore the total quota will be less. We do not take any quota out of a state that did not have an overage. Only states that had overages would we take away quota from. And so if we use a number that's different, then there will be a discrepancy between state and federal permit holders.
All right. With that said, is there a motion? No one is prepared to make a motion. Okay, Lewis.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's on the record too from North Carolina, because we're not quite as brightly flashing as Maryland, but we are brightly flashing. And let you know that North Carolina's discrepancy from black sea bass is from duplicative records from NIMS. Dealers with south of Cape Hatteras permits and north of Hatteras permits are often duplicated by NIMS and GARFO, whereas ASMFC is more accurate, in our opinion, from our analysis. So that's coming from North Carolina, and we have probably a significant issue with our south of Hatteras issue that we have not been able to resolve.
David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move to postpone a decision on this issue until the winter meeting, and ask the states to work with the National Marine Fisheries Service and reconcile these differences.
All right, a motion has been made. Can we get that language up on the screen? All right, David, is that your motion? All right, motion by David Borden. Is there a second to the motion? Emerson. So it's to move to postpone the decision on this issue until the winter meeting and ask states to work with NOAA Fisheries to resolve the differences. Motion by Mr. Borden, seconded by Mr. Hasbrook. Discussion on the motion. Rob O'Reilly.
Well, if anyone's going to wait that long, then that's okay. We found out that it was a pretty quick process. The NOAA data were actually the correct data. It took about 2 days to figure that out, so I imagine the others can figure out fairly quickly, but if they want to wait until the winter meeting, that's probably okay for some states. Virginia's not over. There are other states that aren't over, so there won't be an impact, but I think the important question is, what do we do for the future, and how do we resolve this? We had a lot of situations with other species I heard the double counting. This time, from what I understand from my staff, ACCSP had some missing data. So, I mean, really, it's the future we need to think about, and if we can get some advice on that from the technical committee or others, that'd be great.
Okay, Lewis.
Yeah, I've got a little, I'm wondering about this, ask states to work with NOAA Fisheries. That's not been very satisfactory. Perhaps ASMFC work. ASMFC's numbers are right, and that's been confirmed at least by my staff for our landings. So maybe if NOAA would work with ASMFC to explain why they can't do that instead of putting the onus on the ones that are right, I think that would be a better motion.
Okay, point well made. Tony.
Lewis, I understand your issue, but when we pull the ACCSP data, which is what we would pull sometimes, some of that data is not the same as what GARFO has and what the state has. So the state really is the authority here in what your final landings are. What the commission has is what you all have given us. And we don't know the ins and outs of your data like your data folks do. If we can help you guys communicate with NOAA, we are happy to do that and to facilitate that discussion. But the state is the one that knows their data the best. And any state that has any discrepancy, even if it's 5 pounds, we highly encourage you to work with GARFO on those 5 pounds so that we know what number we need to be using. Almost every single state has a discrepancy from what is there, but because we are so close to the commercial quota, every single pound will make a difference here.
Unless there is fierce opposition to this motion, I'm going to call the question. All right. Is there a need for a caucus? Okay. All in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. Any opposition? Any abstentions? One opposed. Okay, any abstentions? All right, the motion is adopted on a vote of, what is it? 11-1. All right, thank you. On to the next item of business. It's now 3:40, so we have 5 minutes left. 4 o'clock is the time for the starting of the next committee meeting. So let's see if we can make some quick progress on the remaining 2 business items. The next is discuss management priorities for Scup and black sea bass amendments. There's some background information provided in the document that has been prepared by Kirby. We are supposed to have an update on council priorities by Dr. Moore. Is that true, Chris? By the chair? Okay. Would you care to come to the mic, Rick? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Rick Robbins, Chair of the Mid-Atlantic Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. I would like to echo your compliments about Jason McNamee's fine work and all the work that went into the black sea bass reconsideration. That was not a small project or undertaking. It's been a long time in coming. This has been an extremely constrained fishery. And so this is critical relief that reflects a lot of very fine technical work that went into this that was done in a collaborative way. You know, the peer review process that ultimately ensued was also, I think, very collaborative and constructive. So I appreciate all the work that went into that. And, you know, by the same token, I don't want anybody to think on the council side that we're resting on this. This remains a very constrained fishery. This is a $1 million increase, which is badly needed, but we remain very concerned about the need to continue to explore the overall performance of that fishery, and I think the proposed benchmark assessment will give us the opportunity to do that. But in terms of that, we're also considering what sort of adaptive management approaches we might consider ultimately for quota setting in the event that doesn't put us in the position that we need to be in down the road. But we did have a discussion about our priorities at the October council meeting in executive session, and there was a discussion about black sea bass. And the issue that came up there was the fact that there's the potential, the way the accounting requirements are within the FMP, that if the commercial quota is exceeded or is expected to be exceeded in a given year, the agency might step in and close the fishery prematurely. That sets up significant geographic problems for the states in which the fishery hasn't yet been fully prosecuted. There's some states, like the state of Virginia, that has an ITQ system. Mike Luisi described a system in Maryland that functions similarly, and those fishermen may wait until late in the year to try to catch their quota. So if the fishery is closed prematurely, they're not going to be able to do that. So that concern was brought forward in the executive committee discussion, and members thought that we should prioritize an amendment to address that concern. Staff pointed out that we didn't have adequate resources to take on the summer flounder amendment, which is expected to be comprehensive and quite intensive in its nature, that we'll be working closely with the Commission on, and also do the Scup amendment and black sea bass. Some members felt black sea bass, at least preliminarily in that discussion in executive committee, was an issue that was more pressing. As you know, the Scup issues are still out there. That is the overall efficiency of the allocation between commercial and recreational, and also the allocation seasonally among the various commercial quotas. That initial allocation between the two sectors is probably not efficient at lower quota levels. We've been able, in recent years at least, to operate with adequate headroom, I think, for both sectors, but that remains a long-term concern. So it's not that the concern has gone away, it's that the black sea bass issue was brought forward. So, but I think what would be helpful at our December meeting is to put some time on the agenda when we're jointly convened, so that we can talk about, if we do in fact move forward with the initiation of a black sea bass amendment, what items and focal points people would want to see in that, so that we can have some discussion between both the council and the board. But that's still in draft form, so we will have a second meeting on priorities at our December council meeting. And if we were to scope that, it wouldn't be until the first quarter of 2016. And that's all I had on that, Mr. Chairman. Be glad to take any questions.
All right, thank you, Rick. No action is required by the board. A very, very good presentation has been given by Rick as to what's going on at the Mid-Atlantic Council level relative to priorities. Any questions for Rick? Tom Foti.
I don't have a question, but I figured I'd get this opportunity while I'm sitting here. It was my luck to be with Rick, Chris Moore, Garden State Seafood, Nature Conservancy at a dinner, luncheon on Thursday. It was an unusual award they received for the three groups working together. They did an outstanding job working on deep sea corals, and they were recognized by Monmouth University for that interesting blending of bringing three groups, usually diversity, arguing with each other and getting them to agree on a thing that's basically going to stand up and protect the deep sea corals. They were also in great company. Dr. Terry Garcia was there to receive the National Award, former NOAA employee, and so was Dr. Sylvia Earle was there also. So I was lucky I have received one of those awards in previous years, so it was my great honor to be there to see them receive that award and see, you know, them all standing together, Nurture Conservancy with Greg Domenico, Ernie Panzan, and the Mid-Atlantic Council. Well-deserved award.
Rob.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment and thank Rick and also Chris Moore for the opportunity that we may have this amendment. It's been very important. What Rick didn't mention is also there's a market force, and if states aren't held to the quota, you heard Tony Kearns explain there is accountability, that eventually in 2 years states will assume the surplus that they managed to harvest. But while that's going on, it's an impact on the market as well. And if you looked at the data today, you would see that it's not only IFQ or ITQ states that could suffer from a closure, it can be some other states as well. So this will be important to work out and to really get down to the fundamentals of how we can have, you know, a little bit more equity in terms of this quota. So I appreciate that effort going forward.
Kirby.
So just wanted to make clear, as David Pierce pointed out before, there's not the need for a motion on this update from the council, but just that given that the board is in agreement with the council in moving forward and prioritizing a black sea mass amendment ahead of a Scup amendment. The reason why it's important to note this is just that at the August meeting, the council and commission were in agreement with starting a scoping process for Scup, and this would be shifting that. So long as the board is in agreement with doing that, that's fine.
So unless there is any objection, we'll proceed as the Mid-Atlantic Council has decided to move, and that is to work on the new black sea bass amendment, to give that the priority. So I see no opposition to that. All right, last item on the agenda is to consider the 2015 FMP reviews and state compliance. In the interest of time, since it's 3:45 right now, I'll simply say that the plan review team has examined all of the reports, compliance reports provided by the different states, and everyone is in compliance. There is no problem with that, fortunately. However, there is needed action to conclude our board business today, and that is the request from Delaware for de minimis status for summer flounder and for Scup. Do I have a motion to that effect? Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the board accept Delaware's request for de minimis status for summer flounder and Scup.
Motion by Pat Augustine. Is there a second to that motion? Rob O'Reilly. All right, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor to approve Delaware's request for de minimis status for summer flounder and Scup. Any discussion on the motion? Yes.
Just some clarification, Mr. Chairman. That de minimis status for Delaware for summer flounder, that refers to commercial only?
I'll turn to staff on that. What it doesn't indicate, so I'll ask for a clarification.
Yes, it's just for commercial. Yep.
All right, thank you for that clarification, Brian. All right, any need to caucus? I see no need to caucus. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. Since it's majority then. Okay, it's unanimous. So the motion has been approved. Next item of business is other business. Before I do that, Tony has asked for the floor.
We just need to actually approve the FMP reviews as well. You can do all three together.
All right, because I would need a motion then to approve all of the FMP reviews for Scup, sea bass, and for fluke. A motion to that effect. Bill Adler. Second would be David Simpson. All right, discussion on the motion. I see none. All those in favor? All right. Unanimous. Thank you. Other business? All right, Kirby has some other business. Go ahead.
So it was included under the meeting briefing materials. The council at the end of the August joint meeting passed a motion to have the commission look at landings flexibility and try to address it through the commission process. This was asked to be added to the agenda as a discussion item. There is no action in turn actually to be taken at this point on the item, but if the board wished to discuss it and provide any comments to the council, staff can work to do that at this point.
If there is any desire to comment on that, I would suggest it be done directly with council staff because we are out of time and we have other business to take on. In addition, there's plenty of opportunity to offer up prospective comments to the Mid-Atlantic Council as it moves forward with its scoping process on this and other related issues for summer flounder. All right. So with that said, we'll use that approach in dealing with this particular issue. Any other business? I see none. A motion to adjourn. So a motion to adjourn that I assume all approve. So meeting is adjourned.
ACCSP, right? 4 o'clock. The ACCSP Coordinating Council will begin at 4 o'clock.